Gentlemen, it's good to be back with you after looking at the outline of the enabling provisions in the draft DAP 2026 in the first session. Now in the second session, let's have a look at buy schemes more in detail. So before we start off on each one of the particular capital acquisition scheme, let's have a recap of the last slide of session 1, which was the outline of the complete capital acquisition schemes. So capital acquisition is divided into the buy schemes, the development schemes, and the additional procedures. In the buy schemes, you have the buy, and the buy is either buy Indian, indigenous, design, develop, manufacture, or buy global. Buy Indian, which allowed a backdoor entry into foreign products with 100% indigenous content during trials, and later on it was indigenized, leading to major problem, has been knocked out of the complete buy procedure. And buy, it used to be buy and make. The make has been replaced by manufacture, and buy and manufacture is buy Indian or buy global. And in both cases, you manufacture in India. We'll have a look at that. These are the basic 4 procurement categories reduced from the 5 previously. The development schemes down south remain the same. That is the make and innovation. The make and innovation is divided into the make procedure, which is make 1, make 2, make 3. They remain the same, a little changes, which we shall come to. And the innovation has got major changes, not in the grouping, but inside it, which is the indigenous design excellence, startups and MSMEs, basically, the internal organizations, innovations, and the technological development fund by the DRDO. The design and development by the DRDO is by the DRDO, DPSUs, also the internal research organizations. OFBs have been knocked out. You also have the additional procedures. The additional procedures are long-term bulk acquisition, which was in DAP 2020. The leasing, in which the DAMP category has been introduced. The fast-track procedure, which has been exceedingly successful in the preceding years. And you have the new chapter of the low-cost capital acquisition inserted in, a very exciting chapter. The other capital procurement procedures, which was there in DAP 2020 also, I look at it as capability maintenance, and you have the strategic partnership model now put into the additional procedures. I would like to see it given greater amount of importance as a separate category under the buy. Point to note, the make, innovation, and D&D may be pursued in isolations or in sequence or tandem with any one of the procurement categories. So both of them can go on simultaneously. So no longer it is that only one will go in. So whichever succeeds first will go through. If you find at the time of fructification of the buy scheme, you already have the make scheme coming through, you obviously will go in for the make scheme, or it will be divided. At the outset, let's take on the buy schemes, the 4 procurement categories that are there, which are the most important. Understanding them causes the rest of them to fall in place. They have inflections of change only, besides the procedure being largely the same. The first of the acquisition category in buy is the buy Indian, indigenously design, develop, manufacture. All 4 words are extremely important. So the criteria for this kind of a category is that it is already in service. It is available for use in some other sector, but yet not been absorbed into service. It has been produced, available in the market, but it is not in service as yet. So either 3 of it, you can go in for this kind of a category. Importantly is that the acquisition has to be from an Indian vendor and not from a foreign vendor. It has to be produced through indigenous in-house R&D, research and development, design and development, or any one of the other development schemes that we saw in the outline. The vendor has to have the capability to supply the equipment, firstly for trials, and then for productionization, operational use, with the required indigenous content and the indigenous design, as per the quantity and schedule of provision/delivery, as per the schedule and the quantity that is legislated in the contract in the AON when you're considering the fact that whether this vendor is qualifies or not. Now, the indigenous content, what has been introduced is that at the trial stage itself, the vendor will have in the equipment provided for trials, the prototype, a minimum of 30% indigenous content, which shall be checked. So no longer the vendor can produce something from equipment from abroad across the shelf, produce it for trials, give a certification that he'll meet the indigenous content at the time of delivery, carry out the trials, pass the equipment, and then look at indigenization, create a problem in the delivery. And also trial of the changes that have been carried out. So a minimum of 30% will be ensured, which at the time of delivery, after the contract is signed, he will upgrade it to 60%, which is an increase of 10% from the previous 50% that was legislated. Also, indigenous design requirement has to be met. A point to note, this 60% indigenous content that he has to ensure at the time of development, at the time of delivery, could be in a graduated process. That means the initial lot of delivery may be at a lower indigenous content, but to have the 60% across the board for all the delivery, the last delivery may well be more than 60% also, so that an average of 60% has been achieved. The TRL level which has been introduced is from 5 to 9. That means there has to be an equipment available and not that at the design stage, conceptualization stage, computer modeling stage. If a vendor can provide a TRL of 6 to 9, then the vendor can be considered in this category as an ab initio single vendor. Normally, it is not allowed. The government financial regulations allow for a competitive entry into the bid. However, if he's got a higher TRL, he can be granted as an ab initio single vendor, which is an opportunity for higher technology in the industry being offered in this category. The next one in the buy category is the buy global. I'm not going as per the pecking order. But the buy global, the criteria for vendors for going in for this kind of a category is either the equipment is not of strategic or long-term nature, or the equipment is of strategic or long-term nature. Both the treatments are different. Now, if the requirement is not of strategic or long-term nature, and cannot be fulfilled by a higher category. All categories of procurement are higher than buy global. Then either it has to be a multi or a single vendor basis. You could also go in for fast track procedure in case of urgent operational requirement. In case the equipment is of strategic or long-term nature, then you can go in either the foreign vendor, or all vendors could be of the same country, or there could be more than one foreign vendor of different countries. Now, when there is a single foreign vendor or all vendors of the same country, then you can go in for a G2G agreement, oblique the IGA agreement with the USA, government-to-government agreement, or the Indo-governmental agreement with the USA. For multiple vendors of the same country, the product can be selected, and then the foreign government is approached for facilitating the contract. When there is more than one foreign vendor from different countries, then it has to be under a competitive bidding basis, and the government of the L1 vendor, after the contract has been signed, that means he's come after the L1 has been identified, then you could involve the government of the L1 bidder if required. In all issues, it involves the transfer of technology as well as the maintenance transfer of technology as necessary as required. Buy global is the least of the pecking order. In fact, you have to justify why you can't go in for a higher order before you get to the least order that is there. Now, it could be an outright purchase of equipment from foreign vendors. It could be like we pointed out on the government-to-government agreement, the IGA route with the US government. Or it also could be from an Indian vendor. That means the Indian vendor can come into a buy global category in case he can provide the product. For the indigenous content at the prototype stage or the equipment under trial stage, there is no requirement of indigenous content. However, during the contract delivery stage, he has to ensure a minimum of 30% indigenous content. Now, what is exceedingly important that when you go in for the acceptance of necessity, at that time, there has to be a proposal appended to the proposal for buy global, which says as to how an indigenous development through a make or the design and development route can be for the same product. This proposal has to be there. The DAC, which is entitled to approve buy global cases, will go through this also, the proposal for the indigenous development through the make or the design and development route, and then make up its mind whether to go global or whether to go for make or design and development route. What is extremely important is nothing can be bought on the buy global route which is already on the positive indigenization list. It is banned for buying global. The next important acquisition category is the buy Indian and then manufacture in India. The criteria for selection of this category that either this equipment is already in service or it is being capable of being manufactured, integrated and tested by the Indian industry. That means all key technologies are available, or it is capable of met with technologically absorption by Indian industry. This Indian industry may be supported by the foreign OEM, which is willing to transfer technology and the maintenance transfer of technology to it for the purpose of production. In this, the buy component, the initial acquisition is carried out in the fully formed state from an Indian vendor. This Indian vendor may well be importing the equipment from a foreign OEM. It is allowed. However, when it gets to the manufacture component, it has to be followed. The initial procurement has to be followed by the indigenous manufactured in phased manner involving the absorption of TOT of a specified range, depth and scope from the foreign OEM if at all he is involved in the product supply. During the trial stage, when the prototype or the UT is produced, there is no requirement of indigenous content. However, during the production stage, he has to achieve a minimum of 60% indigenous content across the board as taken as a yardstick for the complete supply, for the manufacture portion only. The initial buy quantity can be zero. It means that you need not take any fully formed amount. It could be manufacture amount only. The TRL in this case, the technological readiness level, has to be a high level of 8 to 9. 9 is the highest. And as I said, a graduated approach to achieving indigenous content is allowed in this, as long as across the board, as the yardstick, he has achieved 60%. Now we come to the acquisition category, buy global and then manufacture in India. The criteria for selection of this category is that it is available with the foreign OEM. It could be in service in a foreign country or not. However, importantly, the foreign OEM is willing to set up a subsidiary in India or a joint venture with the Indian company, or there is a transfer of technology to the Indian production agency for manufacturing in India, which may also include the MRO if contracted. And importantly, it is for the entire life cycle of the equipment. Now, what it involves is the outright purchase of the equipment from a foreign vendor of the necessary quantity. It could also be from an Indian vendor, and when it is from the Indian vendor, 10% less indigenous content is required. This is followed by an indigenous manufacture of entire oblique a part of the equipment and spares oblique assemblies along with the MRO if contracted through its Indian subsidiary or joint venture Indian production agency with transfer of technology and importantly for the complete life cycle support of the equipment. At the prototype trial stage, UT stage, there is no requirement of indigenous content, it's nil. However, throughout the contract stage, the vendor has to achieve a 60% for the manufacturing portion in India. That means across the board, it has to be a 60%. It can be a graduated form of increase in indigenous content also. The initial fully formed, that is the buy quantity, is not mandatory. It may well be 0. The TRL, the technological readiness level, is at a higher level of 8 to 9, 9 being the highest of the offered technology. Now going to the left bottom corner, importantly, there is a decreasing order of priority. The most important order of priority in the categorization is Buy Indian, Indigenous, Design, Development, Manufacture, followed by Buy Indian, Manufacture in India. The third is Buy Global, Manufacture in India. And the last in the pecking order is Buy Global. Whenever you go for the EON for a lower category, the SHQ has to justify as to why the higher category cannot be procured. For example, it's going for Buy Global and Manufacturing in India. It has to justify why a Buy Indian IDDM or a Buy Indian Manufacture in India cannot be procured before the EON approving authority accepts Buy Global Manufacture in India. I had already brought out on the Buy Global issue, there has to be a parallel statement of case attached along with the EON approving statement of case, which has to be there of the equipment being indigenously developed oblique in the make route. Now, equipment in the positive list of indigenization cannot be procured under the Buy Global route. It can only be done under the Buy Indian IDDM route or the Buy Indian Manufacture in India. In this, only if the buy quantity is 0. That means the entire lot is being manufactured in India. In the DAP 2020, the category of Buy Global Manufacture in India was allowed in the positive indigenization list. However, it has been eliminated in the Draft DAP 2026. I fail to understand that because the Indian vendor could well be in the Buy Global Manufacture in India. And if it is an Indian vendor with the buy quantity as 0, all being manufactured in India, then Buy Global Manufacture in India could well be in the positive indigenization list. This requires a rethink for an Indian vendor. Steps is the capital procurement procedure for the buy schemes. I will not go in detail into it because each one of them would require a series of lectures. And this is only a draft that is there. There is not major change in the complete steps. However, within the steps there are changes. We shall come to it later on. Now, the first stage in this is the RFI, request for information. I consider this as an extremely important stage because that is what tells us as to what is available in the industry. Now, an RFI input is extremely important for the purpose of the categorization as well as for the SQR. Whereas the SQR may not be completely dependent on what the industry tells you. However, a bulk of it has to be based on the RFI response. At times, the RFI response, because of various reasons, lacks coherence and therefore leads to a major problem in the SQR. It is an important step. The next step is formulating the SQR. This is a very, very important stage because once the SQR is made, the equipment has to perform to that required quantity, of that requirement. Now, the parameters that are put there, the SHQ has to determine first as to how it will test out these parameters. That is extremely important before putting in the parameters in, because once the parameters are done and it is included in the RFP, and you then start deciding as to how you will test it out to test out the particular SQR, then becomes a problem, and changes in SQR are extremely difficult or next to impossible. The third stage is the acceptance of necessity, where you go to the designated procurement authority for that particular financial power, and you ask him for the acceptance of necessity. We have already dwelled on certain aspects regarding the AON in the preceding portions. Then a most important aspect is the issue of the RFP to the vendors concerned. It is normally a closed RFP which goes to selected vendors. In certain cases, it could be an open RFP also, where vendors that qualify in the criteria can respond to it. Please keep in mind the inputs to the RFP are done in the pre-bid also. You consult the vendors concerned before you work out the RFP. The RFP, draft RFP, is vetted across the board by a number of people, number of agencies, and then is only formalized. On the issue of the RFP, the vendors respond to the RFP and the offer opening takes place. Normally, the bid is two-stage, is a single-stage two-bid system in which both the commercial offer and the technical offer is given in different sealed containers. Whereas the commercial offer is kept sealed till the time the CNC, the Contract Negotiation Committee, is formed and they open it. However, the technical bid is opened at this stage, and it is thereafter evaluated in what is an important issue, which is the Technical Evaluation Committee. The Technical Evaluation Committee is made out of the necessary people. They look at the technical bid. Importantly, what is there is the Technical Evaluation Committee has to do it in 30 days. It becomes next to impossible if the technical bid is not coherent. It has to be coherent in the fashion that if for example the accuracy is the vendor has said is 5 mils. Now in the technical document it has to be flagged, and a correlation in the summary in the matrix has to be made, refer to para so and so, appendix so and so, booklet so and so, which is flagged. So it becomes easy for the Technical Evaluation Committee to consult it and be able to give a tick that it is correct as per the technical documents. The next to it is the field evaluation trials, which is a major issue, the most time-consuming issue. We shall come to it later on, and a large number of changes has been carried out, but a large number of changes is required in the DAP 2026. The staff evaluation of the field evaluation trial report is carried out by the SHQ, by the CD Directorate, and the analysis of this is put up for approval at the designated authority that is there. There is a technical oversight committee for cases which are above 300 crores, where they look at an oversight for the entire technical process there. And while all this is going on, in fact, while the trials are going on, a benchmark negotiating committee, BNC, is put up, which looks at the costing of the particular product. And at the time when the commercial negotiation committee comes in being, the BNC report is available to it for consultation in negotiation as to what should be the price of the committee of the particular product. The commercial negotiation is carried out only if, normally only if the benchmark, the price quoted is above the benchmark. However, certain circumstances look at even negotiation, even if the benchmark has not been, it is below the benchmark. There is the independent expert monitor committee that is there, and this committee, it is very important for the vendors to know the details, including addresses, are given in the RFP. Changes to it are given to the particular RFP respondents, and any kind of an appeal can be made to the IM in case the vendor feels aggrieved that the procedures have not been followed correctly. And thereafter it goes for approval to the CFA, their competent financial authority, as per the costing of the particular product. And the contract signing between the MOD and the vendor takes place. And the last is the contract, post-contract management, which is a major issue because changes in contracts do take place of many aspects. Having had a look at the buy schemes in session 2, we shall have a look in the next session at the development scheme as they are in the draft DAP 2026. Till then, thank you so very much.
It's been a pleasure to be with all of you. This and earlier sessions that I have taken are available on the YouTube, my Google blog of Knowledge Enabler Defense Procurement, as also my LinkedIn account. I'm also broadcasting to anyone who wants to receive the message. So should you want to receive it, just send it to this number that is listed on this slide, want to receive, and I'll send it directly across to you. And these will only be DAP sessions. I will not be sending anything else and cluttering up your inbox. Do subscribe to my Google blog. It is free and it encourages me to further go ahead. Do disseminate these videos to people who can utilize it usefully so that maximum can benefit. Do like this post. It's certainly encouraging and it is free. Thank you so very much. Till next time.